Hello, good evening. I am Tingnay Tim Hokip, and this is TC Network News Program. Today's top headlines include: Armed miscreants ransack properties of ITLF at midnight of 17 March 2024. Preparations for 18 general elections to Lok Sabha 2024 underway. Implementing Citizenship Amendment Act are fundamentally discriminatory in nature, UN-US Amnesty International. News in details. ITLF strongly condemned the vandalization and destruction of its office by a group of cowardly armed individuals at midnight on March 17, 2024. In its press release, the ITLF said additionally, the small elite armed group attempted to murder ITLF spokesperson Ginza Volzong at his Deep Highland residence that same night, and ITLF vehemently denounced this action. As we battle the MayDay extremists and the MayDay government's ethnic cleansing program against the Cookie Zone, this act of uncivilized and perhaps fatal violence towards members of one's own community in the center of our town is unacceptable. ITLF will not tolerate this heinous act and won't stop until the elite offenders come out and settle with ITLF as soon as possible, added the release. With the announcement of the schedule for the 18th general elections to the Lok Sabha 2024 by the Election Commission of India in New Delhi, the Model Code of Conduct has been put into effect. This announcement imposes restrictions on the printing of pamphlets and posters in the region. Under Section 127A of the Representation of the People Act 1951, the requirements regarding the printing and publishing of election-related materials have been outlined. The section mandates that any election pamphlet or poster must prominently display the names and address of both the printer and the publisher. Additionally, individuals are required to provide a signed declaration of identity attested by two non-individuals to the printer before publication. Furthermore, copies of this declaration must be sent to the Chief Electoral Officer (CEO) or the District Magistrate, depending on the location of printing. Failure to comply with these regulations carries penalties, including imprisonment for up to 6 months or a fine of up to 2,000 rupees or both. This notification issued by the Office of the District Election Officer (DC). Firzol District serves as a reminder to all concerned parties, including aspiring candidates, political organizations, and workers, to adhere strictly to these guidelines during the election period. The notification of rules for the implementation of the Citizenship Amendment Act (CAA) has invited severe criticism from the United Nations, the United States, and Amnesty International, calling it fundamentally discriminatory in nature. A spokesperson of the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights told Reuters, "As we said in 2019, we are concerned that CAA is fundamentally discriminatory in nature and in breach of India's international human rights obligations." The official added that his office was studying whether the implementation of the law complies with international human rights law. Similarly, the United States expressed concerns. "We are concerned about the notification of CAA on March 11. We are closely monitoring how this act will be implemented," a State Department spokesperson told Reuters separately. Respect for religious freedom and equal treatment under the law for all communities are fundamental democratic principles, the spokesperson added. On the other hand, Amnesty International said the Operationalization of the CAA is a blow to the Indian constitutional values of equality and religious non-discrimination and inconsistent and incompatible with India's international human rights obligations. The Citizenship Amendment Act is a bigoted law that legitimizes discrimination on the basis of religion and should never have been enacted in the first place. Its operationalization is a poor reflection on the Indian authorities as they fail to listen to a multitude of voices critical of the CAA from people across the country, civil society, international human rights organizations, and the United Nations, said Akar Patel, chair of the board at Amnesty International India. 4 years after the contentious Citizenship Amendment Act (CAA) was enacted, the Narendra Modi government on Monday, March 11, notified necessary rules for the law to be implemented. Without rules being framed, the act could not be implemented. The CAA aims to provide citizenship to Hindus, Parsis, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, and Christians purportedly fleeing persecution from India's Muslim majority neighbors, namely Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh, and who arrived in India before 2015. The exclusion of Muslims from the provisions of the legislation and fears that it would disenfranchise many Muslims in India when combined with the National Register of Citizens had drawn widespread protests from thousands of citizens across the country. Despite the protests and violence that ensued, the government notified the law in December 2019. Members of the Center Church Salem Saparmina KBC Gambit No. 4 donated 1 DI Tata of firewood to women folk who are keeping guard at Gamgipai, Kangpopi district. On behalf of the church members, the both visited the place, and not only did they donate firewood but also motivate the women folk as well. Reverend Han Kumang Tuboy, Pastor Chief Church Center Church Salem Saparmena KBC No. 4, prayed for women folk as well as village volunteers who are posted in different locations. The deacon board also extended financial help to them. Church members of KBC No. 4 also handed over to Hahau Lotzem, Chairman Defense Committee, Kangchup Area, Sadar Hills, for Kangchup Area volunteers a sum of rupees 50,000 only. Hahau Lotzem, Chairman Defense Kangchup Area, Sadar Hills, expresses his gratitude to KBC No. 4 for financial assistance and said this is a good example everyone must possess. The Nagaland Indigenous Peoples Forum (NIPF) and the Jaw Reunification Organization (JORO) in a joint memorandum of understanding have asked the government of India to revoke the scrapping of the Free Movement Regime (FMR) and abolish the Forest Conservation Act (FCA 2023), Citizenship Amendment Act (CAA 2024), Uniform Civil Code (UCC), and the Armed Forces Special Power Act 1958 (AFSPA). According to the joint MOU, the FMR has played a crucial role in allowing the communities to seamlessly traverse borders without being constantly reminded of the political divisions. If India decides to abolish this regime, we would be compelled to obtain passports and apply for visas to visit our relatives or attend funeral services, significantly impacting our traditional and daily lives, it stated. It also underscored that the livelihood of the communities and their economic survival would be at stake since they will lose their rivers and its resources, the mountains and lands where they draw their economic sustenance. The joint MOU also maintained the FCA 2023 will result in losing several square miles of land, which the local communities depend on for daily economic sustenance. We, the agrarian communities whose economic survival depends on the land and forest products, will no longer have land for food. We cannot accept this act to surrender our ancestral land for our survival, it stated. On the CAA, the joint MOU said this act will destroy the sibling connectivity among the different communities and will make further division by possibly influx of illegal migrants. It meanwhile termed the UCC as a grave concern for the tribal people of the Northeast, while expressing apprehension that the customs and traditional that govern their holistic well-being and functioning would be destroyed. Terming the AFSPA as an act racially against the people of Northeast India. It said this law obliterates all rules of law in the area where it is applied, and it was high time the government of India rescind this act. The joint MOU pointed out that the notion of abolishing the FMR and implementing border fencing FCA 2023, CAA 2024, UCC and AFSPA 1958 are in direct contradiction to Article 36(1)(2) if the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples 2007 UNDRIP and runs in contradiction to the spirit of the declaration. It reminded that the government of India is a signatory to the UNDRIP, which asserts the right of indigenous peoples divided by international borders to maintain and develop contacts, relations and cooperation across borders for spiritual, cultural, political, economic and social purposes with their own members as well as with other people across borders. Yesterday at around 4 p.m., the MayDays looted wood and sand at the bordering areas of Imphal East and Kangpokpi under Maphodam police jurisdiction beyond Songphel and Gaihao, which is a Tangkhul village. The Paileng Mall area village volunteers are noticing the embezzling action of the MayDays rushed towards the crime scene where a firing broke out between the two groups. The number of casualties and dead is not yet confirmed, but the Paileng Mall village volunteers burned down 2 JCB and 1 Mahindra Thar left by the MayDays embezzler. The Arambai stand on guard during the embezzlement of sand, and a firing broke out in an attempt to drive them away by the Paileng Mall village volunteers. A senior official from Imphal shamelessly spread lies and give false news as always been done by the MayDays, saying, yesterday at around 3:30 p.m., the cookie shot at workers who went to collect sand at Gaihao and Lai Hoi, where they burned down JCB Dipper and Mahindra Thar. The statement given by the senior official is false and biased, hiding the fault of his people and blaming it on the other party. The firing was estimated to last for 3 hours. All the workers of the sand collecting site were reported to be safe. However, 2 of the ZCB drivers were missing after the incident, and the matter was already reported to the police. The police rushed to the firing spot, but due to continuous firing, much had not been done by them. Similar incident took place in this land collecting site on the 6th of February 2024 as well. Mention may also be made that firing broke out between the Kuki village volunteers and MayDays yesterday at Thamnapokpi bordering Bisnupur and Churachandpur. The police have reported that there was no casualty or death from both sides. The Committee on Tribal Unity vehemently opposes the unabated intrusion by the secessionist MayDay militants into areas dominated by Kuki-Zo community, especially at Paileng Mall areas under Cycle Subdivision Kangpokpi. The committee is constrained to learn that the MayDay secessionist militants, in guise of civilians, have been pilfering our villages at El Songphel, Saitang, Bongzang, and Bongbal by unearthing soil and cutting down woods or timbers relentlessly by taking advantage of the current situations. In these connections, the committee would also like to remind the incumbent Chief Minister N. Biren Singh and his people to desist from trespassing beyond the buffer zones into the areas dominated by the Kuki-Zo community. Therefore, Kuki-Zo village volunteers have the moral obligations to defend our land with all our might, means and resources in our side of the geographical divide, and untoward consequences will be the responsibility of the current regime who have been sponsoring the systematic annihilation of the Kuki-Zo community. Today at around 11 a.m., the Posan Pakwada 2024 under Posan Abhiyan celebrates the Posan Pakwada under the theme Posan B Badai B at B Paitam Community Hall organized by the ICDS Tuibong. Ningnay Kim, ICDS Supervisor Tuibong, gave an awareness speech regarding nutrition. Dr. Jair gave awareness on how to care pregnant women and women who are breastfeeding, like their nutritional needs and what foods to be fed to them. She further requests the pregnant women to go for routine checkup and to eat the prescribed medicines regularly. After the program, Posan Pakwada rally was organized, which was followed by visiting of relief camps at B Paitam. The Election Commission of India announced the poll schedule for the 18th general election to Lok Sabha 2024 on March 16. Following this, the law and order situation in Thoubal and Kangpopi district was reviewed. Further, the district magistrate in Thoubal, A. Subhas Singh, has directed all licensed arm holders to deposit their arms at the nearest police stations. This measure is to prevent any untoward incidents during the elections. The licensed arms will be kept in the safe custody of police stations in the jurisdiction of the license holder's residence. The last date to deposit these arms is March 23. Failure to comply will result in confiscation of the arms and ammunition by the District Police Administration. The issuance of new arms license and the application process for the same have been suspended. Appeals against this order can be submitted in written form to the district magistrate by March 20 during office hours. On the other hand, concerns have been raised about potential breaches of the peace in Kangpopi district due to the public carrying firearms and other weapons during the election period. Therefore, District Magistrate Mahesh Chowdhury has prohibited the possession and carrying of firearms by arms license holders in Kangpopi district until the elections conclude. The police station in Kangpopi district have been instructed to ensure compliance, and arms license holders must deposit their weapons at the nearest police station. Meanwhile, nationalized or private banks and registered sports persons with the National Rifle Association are exempt from this order. However, they must obtain individual exemption orders. In continuance of this office press release number 7/24 dated 6 March 2024, it is to notify to all concerned displaced persons or specified voters who are in the relief camps or otherwise, such as staying with relatives or friends or on rents within Churachandpur district, who wish to exercise their franchise in the ensuing general elections to Lok Sabha 2024, that the non-statutory ID form is also available for download from Churachandpur district website https://churachandpur.ur.nic.in. Specified voters can also obtain the ID forms from DEO office, ARO office, ERO or SDOs concerned, and from BLOs through EROs at relief centers. It is also to inform the specified voters that the duly filled-in ID forms should be submitted to the Assistant Returning Officer, ARO, at the earliest in order to facilitate prompt arrangements. Voting facilities will be arranged for only voters who submit the filled-in ID forms. Due to the hostile situation of the district, the Department of Information and Publicity KSO Churachandpur called an emergency curfew. The curfew will be instigated starting 5 p.m. this evening. The curfew is indefinite and will carry on until further notice. The village authorities and concerned youth club should take the duty of imposing curfew in their respective village and locality. If anyone goes against the curfew rules or is found loitering around without respecting the curfew, he should bear sole responsibility for his actions. Russian President Vladimir Putin warned the West on Monday that a direct conflict between Russia and the US-led NATO military alliance would mean the planet was one step away from World War III, but said hardly anyone wanted such a scenario. The Ukraine war has triggered the deepest crisis in Moscow's relations with the West since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. Putin has often warned of the risks of nuclear war but says he has never felt the need to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron last month said he could not rule out the deployment of ground troops in Ukraine in the future, with many Western countries distancing themselves from that while others, especially in Eastern Europe, expressed support. Asked by Reuters about the Macron remarks and the risks and possibility of a conflict between Russia and NATO, Putin quipped, "Everything is possible in the modern world. It is clear to everyone that this will be one step away from a full-scale World War III. I think hardly anyone is interested in this," Putin told reporters after winning the biggest ever landslide in post-Soviet Russian history. Putin added, though, that NATO military personnel were present already in Ukraine, saying that Russia had picked up both English and French being spoken on the battlefield. "There is nothing good in this, first of all for them, because they are dying there and in large numbers," he said. Ahead of the March 15 to 17 Russian election, Ukraine stepped up attacks against Russia, selling bolder reasons, and even used proxies to try to pierce Russia's borders. Asked if he considered it necessary to take Ukraine's Kharkiv region, Putin said if the attacks continue, Russia will create a buffer zone out of more Ukrainian territory to defend Russian territory. "I do not exclude that, bearing in mind the tragic events taking place today. We will be forced at some point, when we deem it appropriate, to create a certain sanitary zone in the territories today under the Kyiv regime," Putin said. He declined to give any further details but said such a zone might have to be big enough to preclude foreign-made armaments from reaching Russian territory. Putin ordered a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, triggering major European war after 8 years of conflict in eastern Ukraine between Ukrainian forces on one side and pro-Russian Ukrainians and Russian proxies on the other. Putin said he wished Macron would stop seeking to aggravate the war in Ukraine but to play a role in finding peace. "It seems that France could play a role. All is not lost yet. I have been saying it over and over again, and I will say it again. We are for peace talks, but not just because the enemy is running out of bullets," Putin said. If they really seriously want to build peaceful, good neighborly relations between the two states in the long term, and not simply take a break for rearmament for 1.5 to 2 years. Putin dismissed US and Western criticism of the election, which the White House said was not free and fair, saying US elections were not democratic and criticizing the use of state power against Donald Trump. "The whole world is laughing at what is happening there," Putin said of the United States. "It is just a catastrophe. It is not democracy. What on earth is it?" When asked about the fate of opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who died in unexplained circumstances at a Russian prison in the Arctic on February 16, Putin said he had simply passed away using Navalny's name for one of the first times in public. Putin said he had agreed several days before Navalny's death to swap him. Reuters reported in February that a prisoner exchange deal had been agreed for Navalny shortly before his death. "I said, I am agreed," Putin said about his approval for the prisoner swap. "I had one condition. We exchange him but he never returns." Navalny's widow Yulia has accused Putin of killing her husband. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters that claims was simply wrong. That was all for today's news, and have a pleasant evening ahead.